Welcome to Pentecast Podcast. My name is Cyndi Birdsong. I am the aunt of Andrew Bellah, your host. Alongside me is his uncle that never wants to claim him, my husband, Lendell Birdsong, and your host.
I'm your guest today, folks. Welcome to another episode. Of course, this is one that has been scheduled for quite some time. We had this planned back when we were in Florida with the Birdsong family, and if you haven't checked that episode out yet, they talk about Crosslight Ministries. Go check that out on our YouTube channel or on our podcast platforms that we have. So I am the guest today, and Brother Lendell Birdsong mentioned that he wanted to interview me, and I didn't want it in the state of Florida. I wanted it to be right here in the setting of your home. And the reason for that is I never thought in a million years that I would actually have a good conversation with you guys right here at this table. To the viewers and even the listeners, this environment that we find ourselves in today was a training ground for me to become a man, basically. And we had a lot of difficult conversations and things that we had to have. And I'm so glad that I'm not in trouble today.
Well, you are still on the hot seat.
I know.
Well, Andrew, Cyndi mentioned that I didn't want to claim you, but I don't think very many people want to claim you. When you walked in this house,
Yeah.
because you'll admit, and I was thinking about all the interviews we've done over the last few days there at Crosslight with, some of the biggest drug dealers in Oklahoma City, what a miracle God has made in their lives. And even yesterday, Brother Darrell Hill, his testimony is unbelievable, how God brought him out of prison and all these things. But yet your testimony is so unique that it stands out among all of those to me. It was such a miracle what God done for you.
I agree.
But I will be the first to admit, and I'm going to hand it off to Cyndi, that when I was approached by my wife as a last resort for us to bring you here and to actually bring you into our home, I was very resistant to that. I hadn't prayed about it, I admit that, but just my natural feelings. I already had my family raised.
Right.
And so it just didn't seem like a good idea. Yeah. But obviously I was wrong, and I admit that. And
Listen up, America.
But the first day you walked in here, you was a broken young man in so many ways, and we mentioned it several times. Maybe it was kind of a precursor to what we're going to be doing later on in life. And that's what we deal with all the time, is just broken people. But also God showed us through your life, personally, right here in this home, how God can transform a young man and make him into something that nobody had thought would ever be.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, my family, I totally adore my family. I'm number 5 out of 6 children. Your mother is number 6. And us girls, we've just all had a close connection. My 2 brothers, they're very close. And, I remember when your mother started struggling with you, your mother and dad. And so I remember your mother calling me and texting me. And she was, of course, heartbroken because you were out and didn't know what was going on with your life and different things.
Even at a young age.
At a very young age.
I would have been 16 or 17.
I was thinking even 14 at one point.
Yeah, well, right? I had already started doing drugs then.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, so of course, you were part of my family, and even though I wasn't in your daily life, it just, I'm so family.
Yeah.
She is.
And so that just...
It's kind of amazing. She's from California, lives in Oklahoma, but I've never saw a family any closer, even with the distance.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that hurt me for your mom and hurt me for you. Mm-hmm. And, you guys did live here for a brief time when you were real young. I remember going on school field trips with you.
Yep.
And I just, I love my family. And one of the saddest things to me that just has never left my memory was the Thanksgiving when you were in the first rehab.
I was 17 years old.
And I remember your mother and dad and family come up to be with us on Thanksgiving, but you weren't here. And we had a good time, but there was that in the background. Andrew wasn't here. And I remember you calling late that night, and we were gathered right around that little bar in the kitchen and had the cell phone on, and we were all talking to you, and you were trying to be so brave, and we were trying to be brave. But the minute we all got off that call with you, we were just crying because of the consequences of what was going on in your life. And if I remember correctly, and you can correct me, but I think they had actually sent you to my brother's the year before that.
Oh.
It's kind of the boot camp, wasn't it?
Man, that's where my story started. I was selling dope in 8th grade, and I didn't really know the consequences of it, but I got some, and I was trying to make $10 for lunch or something, and I knew that it was worth selling, I guess. And I got kicked out of school, and the first thing my mom did when she found out is, you're going to your Uncle Brian's. And I thought it was going to be fun, and it was one of the worst summers I ever had. But he attempted to make a man out of me, and I have some great memories of Uncle Brian that summer.
Got some bad memories, too.
But a bunch of horrible ones. He threatened to kill me several times and threw me in the basement down there. But
Brian has a heart for troubled young men, and
it was a great experience, and I'll never forget it.
And he had also been in the military, so I think he liked to use some of those military tactics, have his own boot camp.
Yeah, he had a chain over my neck, and I was filling up buckets of nasty pool water and throwing them out. And that's just one of the things that I did.
But I knew you had stayed there that whole summer, and then you went into the rehab, and then again you had called right after you got out of the last stint at rehab, and asked if you could come stay with us for a couple weeks.
Yeah, well, I got out of that first rehab. The phone call that you're referring to is actually one of my first phone calls that I got, and I remember you guys were all having a good time. Everybody was here, and I pictured all my family here. And, one thing that you mentioned is that you're really family-oriented, and I think that's just passed down generations. Because I'm the exact same way, and it kind of kills me that I'm the furthest away from my family. There's nobody in our family that I can recall that's any further than I am from everybody else.
That's true, too.
And so I am, I try to involve myself with my family as much as I can, but it killed me. And I remember my mom asking me, "Are you happy?" And she was referring to, "Are you happy there? Is everything going fine?" Right. But I looked at my phone and I said, "Of course I'm not happy." And I remember them getting off the phone. And the ironic thing of it all is that you guys got off the phone, started crying and praying for me. I got off the phone thinking they could care less about me. Really? And I think that's a tool of the enemy, honestly. Yeah. When sin has isolated you.
Wasn't the case.
No, sin isolates you, and the folks that care for you the most, it distances you from them.
And I do want to say something here. I think your mom and dad done the best they could with what they had to work with. They had moved to a new area. Evidently, you got in with the wrong crowd. What do you do with a child like that? It's just, and I think when Barbie called us, she was just at her wit's end. I mean, she's like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, there was a stage there. It all came crashing down. My mom and dad did the absolute best that they could, and I'm forever grateful for them. Sure. But it all came crashing down. My mom was really the strongest one in our home. Yeah. And she was putting out as many fires as she could on all fronts in our family, raising 3 children. I'm the youngest, and when my dad lost his job in 2007 when the market crashed, he lost his soul, honestly. And I'm not saying he lost his salvation. What I'm saying is just his will to succeed in life and in business, and it really crushed him.
A lot too, He had, I think anybody that maybe shouldn't bring this up, but him being adopted.
Yeah.
Maybe that all went back to that, and
Yeah.
and he had a lot of wonderful things about him, and I loved him.
Yeah.
But he did seemingly when he lost his job, and he was very good at what he done. Here in Norman, the brief time he was here, I bought a couple of cars at the dealership. He had never sold a car, and he still, the last time I talked to them there, they don't even know him. They just know that Tom Bellah still holds the record of selling the most cars in 1 month of anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
But he excelled at that, but when he lost that, I guess.
And my dad was my hero. My whole life, I always looked up to him. And my dad had an alcohol addiction. He had many, many problems. But even, the car business really drove him away from our family, but it gave us what we needed, which was money.
Right.
And when we moved down to Texas, my dad struggled with alcohol his entire life. He started drinking before I was born, so I never knew anything different. Right. So all of those problems, the problem in the home, and I always saw my mom as the one that was just trying to keep it together as good as she could. Yeah, right. And so it's hard when you get this perception of your dad is your hero, and this is the way he acts. Right. And I'm not blaming my testimony on him, but it did influence me in the wrong direction. Sure. And that's just common knowledge.
It is.
But going back to the night when I got off the phone with you guys, that rehab that I went to only made me a smarter drug addict. It only made me a smarter, sneaky.
That over and over.
There was and I think we mentioned this at Crosslight in the services posted on Facebook. I think Aunt Cindy said this. She has her ex-convict choir. If you don't know about it, go check it out right now on their page. But there's a group of people in the ministry that you guys do that are ex-convicts, and you brought up the point about how the one thing you disagree with AA meetings and NA meetings is that they portray that you are still
always will be.
Yeah, and the 12-step programs that they have, they talk about a higher power, but really no program is going to do the job that God does. And so I have this rehab experience when I'm 17 years old, no Christian atmosphere, no God atmosphere. Right. And so all of us young teenagers just learn from each other. Some were out of state. A lot of them were out of state. We come together and we get better at what we're doing so we don't get caught.
Learn the ways of the street.
Yeah.
And you done it at a very young age.
Unfortunately. Yes. After I left that drug rehab, that first one, I never changed. Matter of fact, when I got home, I was 10 times worse.
Really?
I was doing things that I never thought in a million years that I would ever try. Honestly, when I first went to that first drug rehab, I wasn't doing what we would consider hardcore drugs or anything like that. The main problem that I struggled with was drugs and alcohol, but it was more rebellion at that point.
Can I ask you this to get the timetable right myself? Now, when was it when your mom and dad just finally said, we've lost control of this kid, we don't know what to do with him?
Right here.
When was that?
It was after I got back from that first drug rehab. Everything was going smooth, everything was fine, because I was hiding it a lot better. And I remember getting involved selling drugs, heavy at that point. My mom and dad are, they're working, so they're busy, and I had I'd already dropped out of school by this time,
Really?
I completely quit school because I had to go to, I was 17. I had to go to jail school. So by the time I was 16, it would have been, when I left 9th grade, I never returned to school.
So you were 17 in the 9th grade?
No, I was 16. No, I was actually 20 when I was in the 10th grade. So, no, I actually failed 4th grade. I think that's where all my drug use started. But my dad always said it was a victory lap. So he said, son, 4th grade could be the best 2 years of your life. So
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I haven't. But so I was 16, and I left the 9th grade. My grades were absolutely terrible. I didn't take school serious and never did. And so I left the 9th grade and never returned to school. And so I left that first drug rehab. When I got home, I concealed my drug addiction, everything that I was doing, my stealing, just fighting, everything that I was involved in. which I'm very ashamed of now. I hid it so well, but I remember one night that forever changed my life, and it's tough, but it's true. I was always afraid for my mom and dad to find out again because I didn't want to get in trouble. And we lived in an apartment upstairs, and I was going down the stairs, and I had 2 massive bottles of alcohol that I was concealing in my jacket. And my mom was sitting on the couch, and I had them in my jacket, so I knew I couldn't go to her. And I was running out the door real fast trying to hide it from her, and I was going to a party, and I was using her car. And I hit the door, and she turned around and looked at me. She said, "Come here, I want to talk to you before you go." And I said, "Mom, I can't. She said, "Come here now." And I opened the door, and I just said, "There's nothing else for me to do. I'm leaving." And I was walking down, and lo and behold, my dad's walking up the stairs. And I had this alcohol concealed in my jacket, and it was a zipper right here. And my dad looked at me, and he says, "Son, your mom's calling for you." And I don't know what possessed me to do this, but it changed me forever. I opened my jacket and showed him what I had. And I said, "I can't." And this is all he said to me: "Don't wreck my car."
Really?
And after that, it was almost like I got his approval. And I went down the worst deep end I've ever went down in my entire life. And that's when it started. I remember one night I was out selling drugs with my friends, doing violent things, stealing, just randomly just sticking people up, just to kind of feed our drug habit. And one night I remember having these little baggies that we were selling dope with, and I had them all on me, and I kept account of them because I know if I lose one of these, they're going to be in my pant pocket, and my mom will find them. And so I was looking, and I lost one. I could not find it. I had gotten so high that I couldn't even reason with myself. And I remember laying in bed the next morning, and my mom screaming at the top of her lungs. And she said, "Andrew Bellah." And I said, "She's found it." And it was actually in my back pocket. I didn't think to look there, but she found one baggie. And when she did that, she lost it. And I was so upset that I just ran, and I think there was a 2-week period there where I didn't speak to them. They didn't speak to me. They had no clue where I was. I grabbed some clothes, and now I'm nearing my 18th birthday, and I got high on Xanax, really, really bad. And my mom and dad called me and said that they wanted to take me out for my birthday. It was the day after my 18th birthday, and I obliged.
I think your grandparents, my mom and dad, were there.
They weren't there.
They weren't at that time. Okay.
No. My mom and dad were leaving church, and I got a ride up to the Red Lobster, and I was so high on Xanax. My sister and I did not get along. She told me how sorry I was all the time, and I didn't know how to take it. And I remember getting extremely violent with her in the restaurant to the point where my dad looked at me and said, "Son, if you don't calm down, I'm going to call the cops." Really? And when he said that, I lost it. The restaurant, I think my dad had to escort me out. The restaurant was calling the police. I just got belligerent. And at Red Lobster, some of their landscape, they have these big stones outside. And I remember throwing one on my dad's car. And the face that he gave me, it was in such disappointment. It actually haunted me for several years, even after he died, because it was the father looking at his son going, "What have I created?" Right. And it was just a face of disappointment. Yeah. And I remember running, taking off, and within 2 minutes, I was in a cop car. And I stayed in the county jail for almost a week. I got out, and I walked all the way home. I think it was like 10 or 15 miles. I'm not mistaken. Right. I walked all the way home. I finally hitched a ride with one of my friends, and I got in the truck, and they had just some weed rolled up, and they said, and I was so disgusted with myself at this point. I said, "You know what, I've got to change." They had this weed rolled up, and they said, "What about it?" And everybody called me by my last name. They said, "What about it, Bellah?" And that was the first time that I ever turned down drugs. I said, "No, not today." And they were shocked. They were like, "I can't believe this." And so I went home, and all of my stuff on a duffel bag was outside, and they said, you can't stay here any longer.
You know, I really think, Andrew, if you could figure out the timeline, I got a feeling Granny Kemp was praying about that time.
Oh, yeah.
Turned it down.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen over and over.
Oh, I imagine. And so I go to my duffel bag. I walk up the set of stairs of the apartment that we're staying in, and my mom and dad are waiting on me. They knew that I got out of jail, and my sister went ahead and called them because she saw me in town. And they were all worried, is he going to kill somebody? Because I was such a bitter, hateful human being. People that look at me now, they almost think that I'm not even telling them the truth, but I was.
Right.
And
He was.
Yes.
I was awful. And so they said, you can't stay here. You've got to go. And that, to answer your question, was when they were through. They had done a little research to a place called Teen Challenge, and my dad said, I will take you here, but I'm not doing anything else. And I said, well, I don't have any other option. And I went there, and that's when God began to deal with my heart. And to fast forward, that portion of my testimony is actually on my testimony. I talked about it in my sermon, how God began to deal with me and break me down. I was not saved at this point, but it was like a Jacob experience at Bethel. It was enough to slow me down to really think that there is a God. Yes. And I remember wanting to make a change, and I went to this bus stop. I left them. They just gave me a ride to a gas station that serviced a bus stop, and I had to beg for money to get a collect call then because I didn't even have a cell phone. And my dad hardly ever answered his phone the first ring, so I know this was a God thing. But I put in enough money, and I called my dad, and he said, hello? And I said, hey, Dad, it's me. He goes, what do you want? My mom was much more forgiving than my dad. My dad's like, thank God he's out of my life. Yeah. And I said, Dad, I've left the rehab, and I'm 3.5 hours away. Will you please come get me? He said, I'm on the way. I told him where he was. And I was shocked. I never thought in a million years that he would come. Him and my mom picked me up. I don't think they said 2 words. When we got to the apartment, I was telling him, I've had an experience with God. I want to change. And I remember my mom telling me, we were sitting on the couch, and she said, Andrew, you're not welcome here anymore. And she had to put her foot down. And at the time, Aunt Cyndi, I did not understand it because I said, I'm your son.
Yeah.
You know, I'm telling you, I want to change, you know. And she said, you can't stay here. And she said this. She said, I want you to call your Aunt Cyndi. She said, she's been praying for you from day one.
So I've actually got her to blame for that, huh?
That's exactly right. She said, I want you to call
Barbara,
your
you're in
aunt.
trouble next time I see you.
Well, actually, that's right. Well, actually, the funny thing is that I never wanted to live up here. I said, man, I just need to clear my head. And my mom says, well, why don't you, Ben and Kara Cripps were down here for a wedding. I think Angela and Brett Long were getting married. Or Brett,
Okay.
He's
Angela
not along.
Long and Brett.
Brett, I can't think of his
Brent.
name. Brent Gregg, right? Okay. It was their wedding. And so Ben and Kara gave me a ride up there, and they make fun of me now. They said we didn't know we were a druggie transport, but I called you, and you knew the trouble that I was in. Both of you did, but the thing that really
Not to the extent. Even today, you've told me things I didn't know.
Oh, really?
I don't think Cyndi knew how much.
I knew more than he did.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you
didn't
didn't
know
tell him
all
everything
that.
because it might have been a no, right? He's
He's
not throwing a rock on my car, I'll tell you. But I remember calling you, and you were just chipper, upbeat, and I said, hey, Aunt Cyndi, do you mind if I come up and just stay with you guys for a little bit to clear my head? And it was so embarrassing.
A weekend first.
It was a weekend. It wasn't
It
even
was
2
a
weeks.
weekend.
And you said, yes, on one condition. I went, here we go. Can't bring my cigarettes. What is it? And you said, you have to go to VBS with me. And I was like, Vacation Bible School. And I was like, well, I don't have any other choice, you know. And so I went up here, and that is how I showed up at your door. That's how I showed up.
And I did make you go to Vacation Bible School. I don't know that we addressed the cigarette issue at that moment.
No, you didn't.
But I did. That was, for you to stay, you had to go with me to Vacation Bible School. Mm-hmm. And we went every night, but I remember asking some of the guys, just spend a little extra time with this kid. I mean, because at this point you were 18 years old.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you were 13 or 14-year-old. And when you were saying a while ago about how angry and your attitude was horrible, really.
Even when I came up here?
I'm like, God.
Even when I came up here, you could pick up on it, or
yes. I mean, I knew you were
were
putting it on a good front in front of
you're
us.
subdued to some extent.
And
Or
you
I'll be
had,
honest with you. If you hadn't have been, I
never.
couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
but I'm like, Lord, if I was going to raise one of these boys, I would have picked Jordan because he was a teddy bear.
Yeah.
Your brother Jordan was a teddy bear, and Andrew
Now
was
he's
just
a huge
bear.
Now Jordan's a huge bear.
You were just a bear.
Yeah.
And Jordan was always so sweet and cuddly, and you were not. But anyways, that I saw something in that little period, but I was ready for you to go home. I'll have to be honest. I was
Really?
ready for you to go home. Not that I didn't love you, because I love my family.
But I guess you saw the baggage.
But I knew that there was so many issues there.
I don't think we saw where we fit in the picture with this. I mean, I didn't for sure. Now, Cyndi was probably going off of emotion because of family ties, but I wasn't. And even though that I, even at that point, worked with a lot of people with issues, I just didn't see how that we could make this work with you living in our house, the rules that we'd have to have. I just didn't see it at that point.
And you didn't ask us at that time.
No. It was, I came up for a weekend, and then it was, well, can I stay for 2 weeks and my mom will come get me? But that didn't change until I think on a weekend service, if I'm not mistaken.
I kind of forgot the timetable. But
It was Vacation Bible School, and then that Sunday morning I was there at church, but I think Sunday night is when I went to the altar and prayed through, if I'm not mistaken.
And then you did ask me one day, we were driving down the road, I do remember that, and you asked
I was
me
conniving against me. I wasn't there.
I had no idea.
if you could just come and live with us for a while. And I couldn't give you an answer without his permission, and
Amen.
and I felt like him. I'm like, God, I've already raised my family, we're busy. What would I even do with this kid? And so I really remember praying over it. And the thing about it is God doesn't always show you the outcome. And I knew it could go either way. It could turn out good like it has, or it could have been a disaster. And that wasn't anything really welcoming to me. And then when I talked to Lendell about it, I could see that he wasn't fully on board with that. And I knew he had to be on board with that with me for it to work. But I remember praying, and just in my heart, I just felt like I got to know that I have given this kid a chance, that we have given this kid a chance.
Let me interject this. When I finally gave in, I gave in off of her feelings. I still didn't have it at that point, but I knew that she felt like God really had spoken to her and said, this is your project. You really need to do it. And I saw her conviction was so strong in that I really basically said, all right, Cyndi, if that's the way you feel, I'll go along with it, and we'll see what the outcome's going to be. It was some time before I really saw
Well, if
what
you
God
remember,
was really doing.
if you remember the first set of rules whenever you guys talked to me, you said I was here for 2 weeks. I'd gotten saved at this point, and the Lord started changing me immediately.
Right.
And you guys sat me down and said, look, here's what we have agreed to do. We want you to go home, and we will let you move on 2 conditions. You go home and raise money, get a job, and raise enough money to buy your own way of going, and you have to get your GED. And that was a death sentence to me because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it.
Right.
But I agreed. I said, I'll do it, knowing that I was going to go home, and I knew I couldn't do it. And someone to look at me now and go, well, what was so hard about that? Nobody understands where I was.
Nobody.
And nobody knows the
And
environment.
we didn't know
that I
what we was
found.
asking you.
No.
We didn't realize the full extent of it.
My mom and dad came up here again with their blue Ford Taurus, and I waved goodbye at the church, waved goodbye at everybody, and that was the most gruesome 3-hour drive back to Dallas that I have ever had. And I remember my dad being home, and for whatever reason, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the day Michael Jackson died. I remember that being on the television. And he and I were at the house. He was folding laundry, and I was sitting on the couch, and I was just thinking, how in the world am I going to do this? And I just started crying. I just started crying. And to somebody that doesn't know me, even for me to shed a tear, even now, when the Holy Ghost is moving on me, I'm not flailing my arms around and doing cartwheels. I'm crying. And it was such a miracle. I remember even when I got saved, I would cry uncontrollably. And I thought to myself, I don't remember the last time that I ever had tears in my eyes because I was so hateful.
Right.
And I was crying, and my dad looked at me, and he says, "What's wrong, son?" I said, "I'm never going to make it." And he says, "You love it up there that bad?" I said, "Dad, it's not that." I said, "I'm not going to make it here." And I knew at that time the transformation had taken place, but I knew that it wasn't going to work.
2 weeks.
And you both ended up calling after a week, I think, or maybe 2 weeks, and called and talked to my mom and dad and said that I think you changed your mind. How did that work?
Well, I realized that it would be very difficult you getting enough money to get a vehicle to be able to take yourself back and forth to work. That was just a request that just wasn't going to happen. And the GED thing, that had to be something that would take some time. But that was our stipulation. You are going to get your GED, number one, first thing, and you are going to get a job.
Look through the camera, folks. That's exactly how she told me 11 or 12 years ago, with her finger pointing on the desk.
You are going to get your GED.
Yes.
You are going to get a job, and we will, help you out from there. And I remember trying to make you sit down at that computer to study for your GED. I wanted to beat you so badly. I wished I had a baseball bat because you're very intelligent. And that was very obvious. And I hate to say that.
Wow.
I hate to admit that. But you did not study for that test. And I'm like, this kid is not serious about this. And that was, I knew you had to have that for your own self, for your own good,
an accomplishment,
for your own self-esteem. And you passed without hardly even studying. And I'm like, oh. But anyway, so you...
Then it fell to me for the car deal.
Yeah, you did. Old
tell you
Birdsong Finance and Company.
Well, you did get it, and he got a job right away.
And I will say this. I was shocked. I thought this kid, probably one of his problems was he just lazy and didn't want to do anything.
And he was not.
But he was not.
He was not lazy.
You wanted to work. You wanted to excel.
I never had to get you out of bed. I never had to bang on your door and say, get up or nothing. You were always gone early.
And it's kind of ironic because of the business you're in now. You're in the finance business of a car dealership.
Right.
You'd never dreamed it then, because when I took you to the bank, I said, "Hey, we're gonna help you get a car." And I'll never forget when we got home, you looked at us and said, "You mean they're going to charge me interest to buy this car?" And we said, "Well, yeah." How do you
Listen,
think
Brother
banks-
Robbie, this is why you
I
got
know.
hired.
Robbie's probably good. Lord mercy.
So what in the world? And we said, "Well, how do you think banks make money?" You said, "I don't know, maybe overdraft charges."
That's what I thought. I did.
So you had a little knowledge of it.
I did.
You had overdrawn account somewhere along the way, I guess.
People that I know dearly that I look like and have the same genetics showed me about that.
So that was your introduction to finance.
And one thing, another rule that I had was there was not going to be cigarettes here. Mm-hmm. And I knew that was going to be a tough thing because
was
I
awful.
knew you were very addicted
it was
to the
one of the
cigarettes.
worst.
And I'm sure you probably snuck around a few times. Don't even answer
I'm not
that
going to
question.
talk about
But
that.
that was just, you live here, we're pastors, we're not going to do that.
Right, of course.
And so
We don't even want the smell of smoke.
No. You know, and to go back about me getting a job here, even that was ordained of God. Brother Johnny Taylor had me on his heart and called both of you and said, "I really feel like hiring
Right
him."
environment.
And it was perfect for me, and I gained a lot of friendships. I worked with Brother Jonathan Taylor,
Yes.
Brother Marvin Dotson, who
Right.
is a mentor to me, and Brother Johnny Taylor. You can't get any better than that.
God ordained it. Yes.
And those poor men probably had to put up with me so much, and
And it gave us a little relief through the day while we was there.
work later. You know, it's funny. I want to mention this real quick because I want to get to the car situation,
sure.
because that's even a God thing as well. And that's actually something that is near and dear to my heart, because I know God did that specially for me. But one time, you won't even remember this, and I've never told you this, so this is fresh. You guys talk about my work ethic, and I'm not late to work. I don't miss work, and Brother Robbie can tell you that's how I operate. And I think I got that from my mother. She's always been faithful to her job.
Yes.
And I remember one day you showed up randomly, and I was framing out a floor for a portable building.
I remember that day.
I don't know why you were there or why you
I
visited,
don't either. Yeah.
but I am here to tell you, the listener, you ran me to death. As fast as you were working, nailing boards, you said you just wanted to help.
Oh, okay.
And you ran and worked so fast, I was ashamed of myself, because I said, I am not letting him outdo me, and I was dead. Yeah, I don't think you remember that, but I was shocked. I said, I never thought that he could work.
I was there, but
You were throwing boards together so fast. I was so mad because I had done this all day, and you come in, hey, fellas, let me help you. Let me give you a hand. And you absolutely whipped me, and I was so mad about it, but that's a confession. But going to the car, you know, you guys have succeeded in life, in your ministry, and God's blessed you. One thing that really humbled me is when I walked out of my bedroom, which is behind this camera. One thing that killed me, I don't like feeling like I'm an inconvenience. And I remember you getting up so early because I didn't have a vehicle, and you would always have a pot of coffee made for me, and it destroyed my pride, because here you are, you've done everything, you've raised your family, and one thing that really broke my heart, it's the little things that change people. It's not these monumental moments in their life. But I remember opening my dresser drawer, and there was a brand new set of socks that I hadn't even asked. But you saw all my socks had holes in them. They were terrible. But I never asked you, and you replaced those. And I remember sitting in my bedroom crying over socks just because somebody cared. And so you would take me to work every morning. You would be there to pick me up, and I was a total inconvenience. My mom had jaw surgery back when I had my very first car. It was a 1988 S10 Blazer, red in color.
Yes.
It was almost 500,000 miles on it, a little stick shift, 2-door Blazer. And I was so proud of that car, but whenever she broke her jaw, we needed that money to sell. I needed to sell that car so we could have the down payment to get in the apartment that we were living in. And I didn't tell anybody, and that's something that I did. That was probably the nicest thing I ever did in my life, and nothing after, other than until I got saved. But when you guys called me, you said, hey, there's a vehicle at the Dibble Diner, which was my hot spot. I love to eat at.
I remember that.
And it was a 2001 GMC Jimmy, 2-door, red in color. And whenever I saw it, I didn't even have to drive it. I knew that was it. We paid $1,500 for that vehicle. And when I saw it, I immediately just bawled and bawled, because I said, not only did God restore my first vehicle, he made sure it was newer and nicer as well. And so that was such a God thing for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do appreciate the financing you provided as well.
Well, I do remember sitting you down and trying to explain some finances to you, and I had control of your finances. That was another stipulation. You were going to give me your money.
Folks, have you ever seen the J.G. Wentworth commercials? It's my money and I want it now. I had to do that to get enough money to eat lunch.
That's right.
I agree with that.
First thing, I made sure you paid your tithes, and then your bills, and then I wanted you to save money, and that was like, oh my Lord, I didn't think this kid was ever going to let me collect enough to have anything left.
That's true. That's true.
Because you were always finding something that you just had.
I had to have. You know who I got that from, don't you?
Yeah.
Tom Bellah. Yeah. And so I started, getting established in the church.
Yes.
And the Lord really started working with me. Brother Jared Mize was my Sunday school teacher, and he had such a burden for everybody in the class, but he like you said on one of the episodes we aired, it was not much teaching as it was a little bit preaching. And
right.
he really had a burden for me. And I looked at him and I said, man, I want to, I listened to his testimony and I thought, man, there's hope for me, And I really started seeing the wheel turn when I got the car and everything paid
I want
off.
to say this about Brother Jared. It was amazing, and he had a family and a lot of things going on, but he lived and died with you guys.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, he played basketball with you wee hours of the night.
Oh, yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah,
He's
they
part of your
opened
success.
they opened up their home, him and Sister Dana.
I know.
And we had Christmas parties there. We had, we ate after church and everything. And the thing about the church that is so sentimental to me at Blanchard was how inclusive they were to me.
Yes.
And I wanted the love that they had. I really did. I wanted that love that they showed me. Sure. And they took me right in. Now, just because I went to church, this is something that I would like to talk about, and I think you guys would as well. This idea that once you get saved, all your problems are gone. You don't have any more struggles. Even in the environment that I was, I don't know if there was a more perfect environment for me to succeed. I still struggled, and I still had times where you guys you doubted that I would even make it as well.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
One of the things I do remember is some of the ladies in the church got to where they really didn't want to see you coming about supper time because I understand you'd just show up.
Yeah,
Is that
Sister
right?
Ronna Curran, she was the main one. Her chili, that was really good,
What about Sister Leah? I think she.
Oh, Lord, I don't want Leah Mooter. Yeah, no, I didn't want her cooking.
One of the other stipulations, and this was one of the struggles that we had. We had told you have to disconnect yourself from everybody in Texas because we know that when people are struggling
There's
with
no hope
drugs,
unless
you cannot keep your friends, later on.
That was such a difficult thing for me to do.
And I knew that. I knew it was going to be. And I remember you going back to Texas for a weekend or something, and God just laid it on my heart to call you at lunchtime. And you happened to be with some of your old friends. And it might...
I didn't tell you. My mom did.
But I knew something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I knew something was wrong when you answered. And your mother let me know what was going on. And I'm like, that's it. That's it.
I had
we can't trust him.
idea.
And I remember you coming home, and I don't remember if we told you on the way home
No,
or
you
whatever.
didn't. I was listening to music, had my hair out, flowing, just so happy. And I pulled into that driveway, and when I opened that door, both of you were waiting right there on that furniture.
Exactly.
And you said, "Come in here. We need to talk to you." And you broke me down.
Come to Jesus moment. Right?
And I remember that. And you know what, though? As bad as I hated that, and I really resented you two because of that, I had never experienced that in my life. Mm-hmm. No means no. Right. The rules, no means no. It was, go ask your mother. And if I tried to break Mom down enough, she might just say, you know what, forget it. Mm-hmm. But no meant no to you two. And
it was life or death to you.
It was.
We realized that. Through it all, we realized if we don't succeed in this, the outcome's going to be disastrous.
And I remember this is another really special moment. And all this is happening so fast in my life, I remember you were building a home in this neighborhood. I don't know the Stonebrook. You were building one right at the end.
Across the road from our addiction.
I'd like to go drive and look at that house because you let me go do the cleanup.
Oh yeah.
And I remember you guys were done. There was nothing. I tried. There was nothing. You guys were through, finished, get your stuff. Want you to leave by Saturday, I think. Yeah. And I remember just being so broken. It was Saturday because we got off on Thursdays with Johnny Taylor. Mm-hmm. So I was down there Friday, and I came home. I came home Friday because we left Thursday. And you said, I want you out of here by Saturday or Sunday, was it? Anyways, you guys said you wanted me gone. And I remember just trying to clear my head. I was in shambles. And I said, well, I'm just going to go clean up at that place. And you said, that'll be fine or whatever, just to clear my head. And I pull up at that place, and I'm sweeping, and I'm literally sobbing uncontrollably, and I can't help it. And Larry and Debbie Knox pull up to that job site. Really? And Debbie wrapped me up in her arms. She said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "They're kicking me out. They said they're done with me." And I remember her she just cried with me. I think they prayed with me then. And I thought, man, this is awful. I'm leaving some of the best experiences that I've ever had in my life. And anyways, I think I got home that night, and you guys said, "You know what, you're welcome to stay for church," or whatever. And I got in there. I didn't even tell anybody that I was leaving. I was kicked out or whatever. I was so embarrassed. And the Lord moved in such a way in that Sunday school room that the young people that morning, and it wasn't me, it was other people that were moving out. The Lord moved so strong in that Sunday school room. If you remember, service never started. Everybody kind of went back there in our Sunday. It broke out of there. And God did such a work for me. He did work for all those young people. Yes. And not only have I had a lot of conversations at this table, but there's been many, many rear view mirror conversations that I've had with Brother Lendell Birdsong, and one that I recall vividly. And I felt like you were so hard towards me. I really did. And I remember sitting behind you guys. I didn't say a word, and I did not want that service to be the reason why I stayed. And so I didn't say anything. I knew I was going home. It was a great service. But I remember you looking up through that rearview mirror, and you said, "Andrew?" And I was like, "Yeah." You said, "We're going to let you stay." And I said, I think you said, "But if anything like this ever happens again, we're done." And from that day forward, I took you guys extremely seriously. Extremely seriously.
But it was another thing you had to learn. You just had to learn that there were some absolutes and you needed that discipline in your life because you just didn't have it at that time. And I could see from that moment on that there really was a change. And we had seen the change in you. You never really gave us...
The change was happening all along. Sometimes there were setbacks. Always is,
Always is, and there's always struggles. Sure. I remember one night just being in my closet on the floor, begging God for direction because we were at another one of those times with you, and I didn't know how we could even keep going on. But in just a few days, that God changed the whole situation, and the changes in your life. They didn't all happen overnight.
No.
But looking back now, you cannot believe how incredibly proud and...
Cyndi, we got to, at some point, transition here. Georgia came in the picture.
Thank you, Amy.
Georgia. Georgia. I used to listen to Ray Charles sing that while I was working at Ferguson. I had it on repeat on my iPhone, and I was thinking about that girl. And
you don't think that was a premonition, do you?
Oh, no, I was thinking about her pretty strong. I started talking to Amy. I remember I was in the backseat of y'all's car texting her.
Again, huh?
Yeah. We were going to Oklahoma City, or Norman, rather, to eat. And I remember Denise and Danny were at that service, and she found out that I was single and said, "You've got to meet my niece."
So that's how that happened.
You know how she presented Amy to me?
No.
She said, "Amy, he's a good boy. He sits on the front row, and he smells so good." So cologne was my thing.
You got that from your dad.
I did. I'm very strong on cologne.
Yeah. He uses a bottle a day.
Tell us again. How many squirts?
Okay, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think it's like I'm a Catholic. I'm, doing my morning prayer, and I do that several times a day. What I tell folks is if you're overweight and balding, you don't have much else going for you. So I have 2 of those problems, so you better smell good at least. So, but yeah, she told Amy that. She said, "He smells so good, and he sits on the front row." And Amy... which is really ironic, but Valerie Estes had mentioned her to me the day after I got saved or the week after I got saved.
Really?
And Amy said, "No." She said,
so Valerie's part of the problem, too.
I know. They all help me. And she mentioned me to Amy, and I didn't even know that.
Really? I should say that was part of our deliverance.
Yes, exactly. You should thank them. Well, Amy, in her wisdom, she said, "No, that's too soon. Let's see what he'll become of." She forgot about me, and I had never heard that story until after we were married. And so, anyways, so Denise, old Cupid, she just starts putting all this together, and she showed me a picture of Amy, and it was I was hooked. And so I was like, I like her. And so I got on the phone with her.
Georgia drawl.
That's exactly right. And everybody that knows my wife. But the one thing is I made a commitment to her and myself that we were just going to be friends, that we were going to, transition into something if it ever turned that. But I wanted to be a friend first. And our relationship really blossomed. But one thing that I realized about her differently than anybody that I had ever dated was how godly she was.
Yes.
And
even at that young age, she had a real experience with God.
She did. And it happened, and she's not like anybody that I've ever met before. And I tell her that she's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me.
Handpicked.
But the Velma Kemp in her says, no, Jesus. And she always corrects me about that. But we met and talked, and me and Bryce Knapp drove out there all the way through. And in South Georgia, where we have gators, rattlesnakes, moccasins, the whole 9 yards, you name it, we have it.
All the things you would definitely
all the things that I hate. And that's so ironic. I wanted to move to Alaska. I don't want to live in the heat. And so we went out there.
You were scared of snakes.
I know it. I know it. And that's probably genetically, too, because I don't think anybody in our family does.
No.
Other than Grandpa. He liked to mess around with them in the yards, killing them and messing with us. But when I went out there to meet her with Bryce and all, and I realized how godly she was, I love spending time with her. She came out and visited us, and we really, started liking each other. And I got this wild hair one day.
One day. This was the thing that drove me crazy. You were so spontaneous. You never thought anything through. And I'm like, oh, my Lord, this kid.
Yeah, I know.
Another stupid move.
Yep. And I remember telling you guys, I'm moving to Georgia. And Aunt Cindy said, are you? And Uncle Lendell said, when? That was a different reaction there. But I remember telling you guys and talking with you. It was a difficult thing. It was a difficult conversation because you guys had poured so much of your time and effort into me. But I remember.
Well, we just didn't know for sure if you was ready for it.
No, and you didn't know her.
We didn't know her. We didn't know the environment you was going to.
Mm-mm.
If I'd have knew all that, I would have felt a lot better about it.
Yeah, me too.
Because I knew even at that point, you still needed some guidance, and you needed
Lord, yeah,
somebody to hold you accountable. But you found that down there.
Yeah, I did. And
Brother Freddie's gone on to glory, but man,
yes, yeah, he's special.
Yes,
took you under his wing.
Yeah, he's
put you on a tractor.
He's awfully special to me. Right. And anyways, so I get down there and I'm working on the farm and getting inundated with the country life. It was like moving to Brian Kemp's farm, and I fell in love with the people down there. And it didn't happen overnight, but I transitioned into their lifestyle, and they when you live that far in the woods, you get a city slicker in there. They like to have fun with you and all. Right. And so I just fell in love with them, fell in love with the church. I never thought that I would love a church more than I did Blanchard. And I can honestly say that New Corinth means so much to me. Blanchard, for the time that it was there, was so special to me. Sure. But New Corinth has meant that much more to me as well for the people. And, I've grown with them.
God moved your allegiance to another place.
That's right.
Which is rightfully so.
He really did. And even sitting here, and I told you guys before we recorded, I wanted to do this here in this sacred setting to me. But even now, I'm missing home because that's where I'm supposed to be.
Supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And Amy and I got married in 2012, and I think, maybe you can transition to that. That's kind of when you got a piece of it at the reception, or no, at the rehearsal, maybe.
Right. When I saw how the people down there just had taken you in and loved you, and it was really hard for me to even imagine anybody loving you because you were really not lovable a lot. I mean, like I was telling earlier, Jordan was the cuddly teddy bear of the family. Andrew was not. He was not
the
one.
Snake.
But I saw how those people just took you in and loved you, and they didn't know everything that we knew about you, and I think that was good, because they just poured themselves into you, and I'm like, this is where he's supposed to be.
I just hope Amy hadn't held it against us.
Yeah,
her not really knowing what we need.
She has, trust me, she has.
And to see even every time that we've been able to go back to Georgia, I'm like, God, this is your perfect will and your perfect plan for this man.
Yep.
And to see the man that you have become, and even when we got to go to the church that you pastored, it was so wonderful to be there and see that. And now this exciting new thing that God has put in your life, this podcast, there's no telling where
Cyndi, this
is going to end up.
We shouldn't have been shocked. He's always sporadic. Calls and says he's going to start a podcast.
I bet y'all shook your heads thinking, here he goes again.
Actually, I probably was a little more like, really? And he was more excited about it than I was, but I think you talked to him
I could
about
see
it
was like, this new baby you got in your hands is just doing something for you, even spiritually. I could see it was doing something
for sure.
It was almost like a mission God gave you, and I love it.
This is going to mean a lot to me 30 years down the road. This is going to mean a lot to me 5 years down the road.
Sure.
And there's so many other stories that we can capture from other people. And with that said, I'm glad this is a good transition as we kind of wind down. Hearing my story and kind of reliving it has been great. But what would you say, you two, what would you say to a family out there that maybe has a loved one that is too far gone in their eyes, that maybe they're thinking of opening their home, opening their hearts? What would you tell them if they're beginning this stage?
Well, first of all, you can't do it unless God really directs it. Pray it through, and when you see that God is really in it, then just believe that God will take it all the way through. But I do want to stress, Andrew, it's not for everybody to do this.
Right.
And it's not wisdom to just bring somebody into your home in the condition you were in unless God is really in it. If God's in it, it'll be okay.
But even at that, you have to know that,
a lot of struggles.
There's a lot of struggles with it, and it comes down to, it's a personal choice whether that person really wants to make a change.
That's right.
And God he is willing to save whoever, but you have to submit yourself to him, and that's a personal choice, But I don't regret it. I really don't regret it. And we had a lot of wonderful times.
Oh, yeah.
We had a lot of struggles, but we had some
Uncle
wonderful
Lendell had a
times.
boat back then that I think most of his stress about me was relieved when he was slinging me off the tube. I think he enjoyed that way too much.
There was a few times I wanted to
Everybody
sling
has
you,
to have
too.
a stress reliever.
Yeah.
But I love the podcast.
Yes.
I'm one
Very
of your
proud of you.
fans, and I want you to know I'm excited about where God is going to take this.
And even your finances, after a little trip to the bank, you finally caught on. You've even done well there.
Praise God for that. I have to give all
Praise
glory to
God and Amy.
I have to give all glory to God and my wonderful wife. This has been such a great episode. I really appreciate this. This has been really special to me.
Yes, too.
Yes, God bless you.